Picture a small town in the Sakha Republic, eastern Siberia. It's February, the sky is clear, there's no wind, and the temperature outside is minus 57 degrees Celsius. That's not a typo. That's not a weather event. That's just a Tuesday. And somewhere on the road outside that town, a truck driver is parked. Engine off, curtains drawn, and he's asleep. Not in a shelter, not in a warming station, in a metal box, the same metal box he drove here in. And he's not suffering. He's not even cold. Most people hear that and assume he must be lying, or lucky, or both. He's neither. There are 4 things you need to understand about what's actually happening inside that cab. The first will change how you think about metal. The second will change how you think about cold. The third involves a piece of technology that most people drive past every day without knowing it exists. And the fourth is the part that nobody expects. By the end of this video, the number minus 57 degrees Celsius is going to mean something completely different to you. So let's start with the obvious question. Why is a truck even operating in minus 57 degrees Celsius in the first place? Because someone has to. The Sakha Republic in Russia, northern Manitoba and Yukon in Canada, interior Alaska in the United States, these are not empty places. They have towns, they have hospitals, they have fuel depots, mining operations, military installations, and the only way to supply them in winter is by road. There are no alternatives, no rail lines, no navigable rivers, just trucks. And the roads that exist only because the ground is frozen solid enough to drive on. These are called ice roads, and the trucks that run them operate in conditions that most industrial equipment isn't even rated for. The cold isn't the obstacle. The cold is the road. Without it, there is no road at all. So the driver doesn't get to wait for better weather. The cargo doesn't care about the temperature, and neither does the schedule. Now, here's what most people don't understand about negative 57 degrees Celsius. It's not just cold, it's a different physical world. At negative 57 Celsius, diesel fuel doesn't flow, it gels. Rubber seals don't flex, they shatter. Exposed metal contracts so much that bolts loosen on their own. And the human body, outside and unprotected, loses consciousness in under 4 minutes. But here's the number that matters most for a driver trying to sleep. Steel conducts heat 400 times faster than wood. A truck cab with no heating system running reaches outside temperature in under 45 minutes. At negative 57 degrees Celsius, that's not a discomfort. That's a death sentence. So the question isn't whether the driver needs heat. The question is how he keeps it running all night without the main engine. Because in most jurisdictions, even in Siberia and northern Canada, idling a heavy truck engine overnight is either prohibited, penalized, or burns so much fuel it's economically unsustainable. At northern fuel prices, running the main engine for heat costs between $40 and $60 a night. For a driver on the road 280 nights a year, that's over $16,000 just to stay warm. Something had to be built, and what engineers built is one of the most underrated pieces of technology on any road in the world. Inside the frame of almost every truck running in extreme cold climates sits a device most people have never heard of. It's roughly the size of a shoebox. It has its own fuel line tapped directly into the main diesel tank, its own ignition system, its own thermostat, and it runs completely independently from the main engine. It's called a diesel bunk heater. Brands like Webasto and Eberspacher have been manufacturing them since the 1940s. Originally designed for military vehicles operating in Arctic conditions, today they are standard equipment on any serious cold weather truck. A bunk heater burns less than 0.2 liters of diesel per hour. At minus 57 degrees Celsius, running all night, It uses roughly 1.5 liters total. Compare that to the 4 to 6 liters per hour the main engine burns at idle. The maths aren't even close. But the bunk heater is just the foundation, because in the most extreme conditions, drivers run something far more powerful alongside it. Something that doesn't just heat the cab, it turns it into a fully self-sufficient living space at any temperature the outside world can produce. It's called an APU, an auxiliary power unit, and the name doesn't come close to capturing what it actually does. An APU is a second engine, compact, fuel-efficient, mounted to the frame of the truck. It has its own cooling system, its own alternator, and its own output capacity. It can run the bunk heater, charge the battery bank, power a refrigerator, run a microwave, and maintain full cab climate control simultaneously, all night, without touching the main engine. At minus 57 degrees Celsius, a properly equipped truck cab with a functioning APU maintains an interior temperature of around 20 degrees Celsius. The difference between outside and inside is 77 degrees. Standing on either side of that cab door, you are in two completely different worlds. But here's the question that drivers in extreme cold never stop thinking about. What happens if it fails? It's 2 a.m. You're parked on a supply route outside Yakutsk. Outside, it's negative 57 degrees Celsius. The nearest settlement is 90 kilometers away. You can't drive there because the road is a single track and there's a convoy coming the other way at 6 a.m. And you wake up, and something is wrong. The cab is too quiet. The heater panel is dark. You check the bunk heater. Dead. You check the APU. Also dead. The cab temperature is already falling at roughly 1.5 degrees per minute in this cold. You have maybe 12 minutes before it's dangerously cold inside. You have maybe 25 before it's life-threatening. This is not a hypothetical. This is a documented risk on every extreme cold route in the world. And every professional cold weather driver knows the rule before they ever turn the key. You do not go to sleep in extreme cold without a backup plan. You do not go to sleep without checking your systems. And you do not, under any circumstances, leave the cab without a way to get back in. Because at 57 degrees Celsius, the door freezing shut on the outside is not a minor inconvenience. It is a survival event. Surviving negative 57 degrees Celsius in a truck cab doesn't start when the temperature drops. It starts weeks before departure. And the checklist that experienced cold weather drivers run through covers problems that most people have never even considered. The first is the fuel. At negative 20 degrees Celsius, standard diesel begins to gel. The paraffin wax naturally present in diesel solidifies and blocks fuel filters and fuel lines. At negative 57 degrees Celsius, untreated diesel doesn't gel. It turns to something close to candle wax. The solution is an anti-gel additive blended directly into the tank before the cold hits, combined with an Arctio-grade diesel formulation available at fuel stops in extreme cold regions. Every experienced driver carries a spare additive, every single one. The second is the battery system. Cold kills battery capacity. At minus 20 degrees Celsius, a standard lead-acid battery delivers around 60% of its rated output. At minus 57 degrees Celsius, that drops below 25%. A truck running an APU, a bunk heater, full lighting and cab electronics through a Siberian winter night needs a minimum of 6 batteries, often 8, wired in parallel. And those batteries need to be lithium iron phosphate or AGM type. Standard batteries don't survive the cold long enough to matter. The third is the coolant. Standard engine coolant freezes at around minus 37 degrees Celsius. At minus 57 degrees Celsius, a truck sitting overnight with the wrong coolant mixture will crack the engine block. The repair cost starts at $15,000. The correct mixture drops the freeze point to minus 65 degrees Celsius. It's a $20 difference at the parts store.
Every experienced driver knows which one they're running. The fourth is something so simple it surprises everyone who hears it. A thermal curtain. A heavy insulated curtain hung between the cab and the sleeper berth reduces heat loss from the sleeping area by up to 65%. At minus 57 degrees Celsius, that's the difference between the bunk heater running for 5 hours or 10. It costs around $60. In extreme cold, it is not optional equipment. It is the line between making it through the night and not. Now here's the part that stops people. Ask a driver who runs the Yakutsk Supply Commodore every winter whether he'd rather sleep in a hotel. Not whether he can, whether he'd rather. And most of them will tell you no. And they mean it. At minus 57 degrees Celsius, the world outside goes silent in a way that has no equivalent anywhere else. No wind, no animals, no traffic.
The cold absorbs sound the way a padded room absorbs it. And inside a properly prepared cab, with the bunk heater doing its job, with 8 hours of fuel in the tank, with the thermal curtain drawn, there is a stillness that most people will never experience in their lives. Drivers who have slept through a negative 57 degrees C night in a well-prepared cab describe it the same way, every time. The deepest sleep they've ever had. The most complete silence they've ever known. A feeling of being, somehow, the only person awake in the world. The most extreme conditions don't produce the most miserable experiences. Sometimes they produce the most unforgettable ones. So the next time you see a ruck parked alone somewhere cold, dark cabs, no movement, no signs of life, those drivers are not struggling. They are warm, prepared, and sleeping better than most people ever will. Now it's your turn. If you're a driver who has run a cold weather route, what's the lowest temperature you've operated in? And what's the one piece of kit you would never leave without? Tell me in the comments. I read every single one. And if you're watching this from somewhere warm right now, drop your current temperature in the comments. I want to see the contrast. If this video taught you something, hit the like button. It's the single biggest thing you can do to help this channel reach more people. Subscribe for more, and I'll see you down the road.